Well, howdy doody doodies. You know, I had no idea how many of you are beginning to think for yourself. I found it kind of interesting about Moses last week. Boy, did I get some beautiful emails. One of them was from a gal that said, you know, I've been in a high wind storm, and if it was wind that blew that ocean apart for him to cross, why, what happened to the gowns and the dresses them guys wore in those days? It blowed them all over their heads. Well, you're right. They did wear that kind of garment. And then another boy wrote and said, if it blew so hard to blow the ocean or the waters apart, he didn't say ocean, he said waters apart, what kept them from blowing the clothes right off their back? And if it did, do they wear underwear in those days? Well, you know, that's the movie. See, that's where the myth becomes a fact. People see that, they see a windstorm, or they hear a wind will do it, and from then on they say, well, it must have been wind. No, why can't God, if God is God, why can't God have a miracle and just part the wind? Here's another thing. If there was water there, that silt and that mud would have been knee deep, but it had to be dry for them to walk across, or at least a rocky bottom, and they walked right across. Another thing we talked about last week, think about it, all Pharaoh's army walks in there with their chariots, and that's a lot of what they used, you know, back then, and they got in there, and then the water closed up and drowned them all. Well, that could be. You see, there's the difference. The point I was trying to make last week is that science always tries to explain people or things to people with a theory, what it could be. And that's true, it could be. I wouldn't deny that. But there's so many variables to that, so many little odds and ends that don't have an answer. So I'd like to accept the fact that it was a miracle, but it could have been a natural calamity. It could have been a freak of nature. And remember, I did say, nowhere does it say it's the Red Sea. It could have been the overflow of the Nile. It could have been a whole lot of things. But the point is that it was a phenomena, and it did happen. It's not just recorded in the Bible. There are other recordings of that. Now, let's go into some more detail about that, being as I find so much interest by you people out there. Well, I'll tell you, Moses, as you know, was born at a time when Pharaoh had heard through a soothsayer, that's some kind of psychotic or psychic, if you like to say so, that came to him and said, hey, you got to be careful, because somewhere along the line they're going to have a birth here, and very soon, I think you, and they're going to get rid of all your slaves. Well, Pharaoh didn't want that, so he says, oh, let's just kill all them Jewish babies. We got enough Jew slaves. We don't need no more. And if we run out, we can always go a little farther down in South Africa and get Nubian slaves. So we got lots of slaves if we need them. But they did. They started killing the babies. But when Moses was born, his mommy said, oh, he's so cute. I don't want to kill this little guy. And she knew that the Pharaoh's daughter wanted a baby in the worst way. Tried everything she could think of. They didn't have infertile clinics or semen clinics and things like that where you could go in and get artificial insemination. They just kept trying the old natural way, I guess. But anyway, she wanted a baby, and the mama of this little Moses, and his name wasn't Moses at that time, that was given to him later, she said, well, look, I know that they bathe in the Nile at this time of year at a certain time. They go down there and they do a lot of having fun with her handmaidens and all that. So I'm going to put him in a basket, and I'll go upriver so that the flow of the river will take him right down where them women are. And that's what she did. She put a little baby in the basket, and she's down there. Well, of course, when Pharaoh sees that, she says, a gift from the gods. You got to remember, at that time, they had over about 900, between 900 and 2,000 different gods that they worshiped, the Egyptians. And so she said, it's a gift from the gods. It's for me. It's my baby. But then the problem was, you see, she had no way to feed it. They didn't have no bottles or no Similac and none of them things. So she said, we got to find somebody that's lost a baby. Well, that old Mama Moses, she pretty smart old girl. She walked on by there, she dripping out of the boob there, the milk factory. And she's dripping little milk, and they say, hey, lady, come over here. How'd you like to feed this baby for us? And she said, well, I didn't know, but I will, I guess. And so that's how that happened. Well, that in itself is kind of a miracle. Saved the baby's life. Now, I've had other people say, well, do you think he was already circumcised? I doubt it. I doubt it because, you know, to put it over on the Egyptian, you kind of forego a few things. And besides that, and sometimes in those days, they didn't circumcise them at birth like they do now. They waited a few years. I guess it was more fun for the sadistic priests. But they waited for them so that they could make a ceremony out of it. And they did. They had a ceremony for it. Well, today we have a ceremony too, even though they do it at birth. I say that gingerly. They have a special chair they sit in, and the priests do their thing, and the circumcision is performed. It's interesting. All the different cultures are so interesting in what they do. But mainly, I want to thank all of you. That's the main reason for this today. I want to thank you for showing me that you are thinking for yourself, and you're coming up with some pretty good questions, really. But I hope this takes care of the phenomena of Moses. I'll talk more about the trip through the desert, the 40 years it took him to find a country that was just a few miles away. That was the Promised Land. And going up and getting the 10 Commandments chiseled in the stone and all that. Those are all good things to know about and talk about. And of course, science has an answer for that too. And we'll go into all that for you. Until then, adios amigos, and I'll talk to you next week.